Straightsmile Solutions, straightsmilesolutions.com. Let's talk a little bit more about E-lines and treatment planning. Let's talk about that as a first round treatment planning. What if you don't have a Ceph machine? Now, I'm not going to tell you whether or not you need a Ceph. If you work with me on a case, I always tell you to follow your Dental Practice Act in your own state or country of licensure. Most orthodontists take one at every case because they just do, even though they may never ever even look at it. It just take it just because they have the equipment in the office. Doesn't cost them anything. Might as well have it. Better to have than not want than to want and not have. But for those of you who do not have a Ceph arm or a giant CBCT where you can extract a Ceph, there are other options. There's always workarounds unless you're in the tiniest town in the middle of nowhere. As long as there's an oral surgeon or an endodontist or a periodontist, even if you don't have a radiology clinic or a university, there's usually a way to get a Ceph. Now, I'm not saying it's free, but there's usually a way to get one. And as you scale up your ortho in your office, whether you do kids or adults, especially kids, you're going to be more likely to need one. With adults, you can definitely get away with just a CBCT with a smaller field for most situations because you aren't doing growth major cases, where you're doing like growth and development or guided growth or anything like that. So I always encourage my doctors, again, to follow their Dental Practice Act and their state or country of licensure, but just for screening, using the E-line, which is this over here, the good old E-line is a great way. I liked when I first see a case, if you ever work on a case with me, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the photos, extraoral first. Before we even look at intraoral, before we even look at panos, before we even talk about Cephs, before we even talk about anything else, we're going to look at the extraoral photos, specifically the facial photos, those 3 facial photos. Mostly it's going to be, the resting photo, the smiling photo, and the profile photo with the E-line. And we're going to say, what do we see? And what kind of problems are you going to notice on an E-line? Well, you probably will notice retrognathic maxillas and retrognathic mandibles. Might also notice a prognathic mandible, although that can be a little tricky to tell without a lot of experience if it's a retrognathic maxilla or a prognathic mandible. In time, you'll learn to do that. And certain things present at certain ages and in certain ethnicities that aren't going to be in others. But you'll see that, if the E-line is funky, it could just be that they have really strong features. If you have a really strong nose and a really strong chin bud, well, then your E-line's going to be off because we're going off features, right? So sometimes if you just have a genetically large nose or a broken nose, it's going to totally throw off your E-line. So you can't just go by that, but the goal is to make the face harmonious and to make it look good. I love this here. This is very nice. I'm much more into fuller lips. I know some people say the E-line should be a little ahead, this should be a little behind. Either way, full lips are definitely the style right now. So I'm cool with, as long as the patient is lip competent and doesn't have myo or mouth breathing, I'm totally fine with having lips a little ahead of an E-line. Remember, lips are going to shrink over time. Soft tissue is going to shrink over time. So as the patient ages, that is going to go back. So, certainly if the patient cannot close their lips over their teeth without mentalis strain, that's a problem. That is way too full. And some people may not feel comfortable with very, very full lips. I think they're definitely more aesthetic on girls than on boys, But anyways, so you can definitely look at, AP issues or sagittal issues, like a class 2 and class 3. You can tell that from an aesthetic plane or an E-line. You can also tell a lot of vertical issues can show up just in the profile photo. And I love to just predict and just say, well, what do we see, or flat cheekbones or venous pooling under the eyes, short lower face of the lip. I like to see a nice acute nasolabial angle. I want to see an obtuse one because that's a red flag to me. And if it's too acute, then it looks bad. So that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, just try doing this on your treatment plans. Before you get into the treatment plan, before you get into whether you need a Ceph or not, just take some time to observe what you see in the face. And watch out, please, please, please. This is my tip. Be careful how you say it to the parents. It's probably not even necessary. Now, if they come in with a chief complaint saying she has a large jaw, she has a small jaw, she has a long face, she has a short face, no chin, that's totally cool. That's their chief complaint. We can go with that. But you shouldn't bring up something that is somewhat subjective, large, small, big. Obviously, if there's numbers to back it up, then that can come up later in the Ceph. You could say, well, average number is this, But I would just, because I mean, I remember once when I think I had kind of strong features, and I think when I went for my ortho screening at 17, you know, the doctor was just talking to my mom, and I was so embarrassed by everything he said was wrong with my face, and I really didn't think anything was wrong with my face, you know, and then that's all I saw at 17. That's all I saw. It really, really kind of killed my self-esteem for many, many years. So please, please be careful how you talk about the patient. And if you need to work on your scripting or your verbiage, this is something that we can help you with at Straightsmile Solutions. It's just a matter of practicing, practicing, practicing. So whether your treatment planning team or, you know, your OM, or the doctor's going to do it, or the hygienist is going to do it, make sure you practice how to say things and how to say things nicely without insulting the patient straight out. So, all right, hopefully that helps. Again, E-line's free, really easy to take photos. They don't cost anything. So just take them and start screening your patients and start sorting out your patients, and you might have opportunities. All right, thanks.